Hi, everyone. Welcome to our final keynote with Katie Cook and our closing ceremonies. My name is Vidya, and I'm so excited to introduce Katie Cook. She is the first female pilot to perform with the U.S. Navy Blue Angels. She served in the active duty Marine Corps as a KC-130 pilot for 12 years, accumulating over 1,400 flight hours, 400 of which are in combat. She then transitioned to USMC Reserves and is now the Senior Director of Sales Strategy for Salesforce's global public sector.
In this role, she leads the global sales strategy team, providing market insights that drive Salesforce's B2G segmentation and growth priorities that power the sales team's forecasting, planning, and budgetary processes. She has 3 children and is married to another Blue Angel alumni. Please welcome Katie Ann Cook.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here. I want to give a special thank you to Whitney Madler, who threw my name in the ring to even have this opportunity. So thank you so much for that. Like I said, I'm so happy to be here digitally with all of you. It's kind of funny that even after being on, the Today Show, Fox and Friends, The Bachelor, and giving speeches like this, like 100 times, I still get nervous every time I speak. And specifically for GirlCon, you all are the next generation of leaders, picking up the mantle from my generation and thus quite a bit younger than me. And I wanted to make, this talk today fun and interesting. And, maybe you can take lessons from it and use it as you navigate the STEM world. But as I was writing it, all I kept picturing was the Steve Buscemi meme of like, how do you do, fellow kids? So I hope all of you do at least take something out of this talk today. Before I dive right in, though, I do want to say happy Pride to our LGBTQ community. You have allies that love and support you even outside the month of June, but it is important to acknowledge and celebrate the accomplishments of the LGBTQ plus community during this month of June. A couple of disclaimers as we get started. Every story that you hear today is my own. Every opinion you hear today is my own. I make no claims to represent the Marine Corps, the Navy, DoD, Blue Angels, or Salesforce. So you just have me today. So finally getting down to it, what is our goal for today? What do I hope you walk away with after the next 30 minutes or so? So the title of this talk is Motivation, Minutia, and Mistakes. I'm going to speak about these 3 factors that I feel are critical to achieving success. As they mentioned in the introduction, I was the first female pilot to fly for the Blue Angels. Specifically, I flew Fat Albert, which is the large C-130 that's not only used for logistical support of the team, but we also do our own aerial demonstration at various shows around the country. Most kids really like us because we're not as loud as the jets, and our show's only about 10 minutes long, which is like the standard 5-year-old attention span. And additionally, now in my civilian career, I work for a company called Salesforce, which has been, the #1 CRM company for the last 8 years, and is the fastest growing enterprise software company ever. So needless to say, being on the Blues and working for Salesforce has exposed me to some of the most successful people in the world. And I've consistently seen these factors of motivation, minutia, and mistakes in both my life and in the lives of other high-performing individuals. I'm going to show how these factors can be applied across any profession, not just in the military in my case. You can think of these factors kind of as a mushroom in Super Mario. You eat it, you internalize it, and you level up to like Big Mario, right? So that's what we're going to approach this as. All right, so we'll start with the first M, motivation. So the definition of motivation is the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. And for the purposes of this discussion, what is it that makes your employees, or in my previous life, my Marines, continue to come to work hard, and achieve results? What is it that keeps them from quitting and finding work elsewhere? So when I was a young girl, I remember thinking that adults only got jobs because they wanted to make money. And they put all that money in a giant vault and swam in it like Scrooge McDuck. Now, y'all are quite a bit younger than me, but I hope some of you know who Scrooge McDuck is. And that show had like the most fire opening theme song ever. It was like, life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, airplanes. It's a duck blur. You might solve a mystery or rewrite history. Woohoo! But anyways, so if you know the song, now it's gonna be stuck in your head like all night. If you don't know the song, look it up, make up a TikTok dance to it or something. But it's awesome. But anyways, so I was under the impression that money or financial gain was the only motivation behind getting a job. And don't get me wrong, in some situations, this may be the case. However, especially in the military, you rarely hear someone say they joined for the money, right? So in my life, I had a very influential person, and it was actually my paternal grandfather. I referred to him as Bucky. And my grandfather's family actually were immigrants from Sweden. So my grandfather was a first generation American, and his family came here literally with the clothes on their back and the things that they could carry. And so with one generation, my grandfather joined the Army Air Corps and the Air Force when it came about. He took his family from basically nothing to upper middle class and quite literally lived the American dream. And so as I was growing up, Bucky really instilled in me this idea of giving back to a country that had given me so much. And so you really instilled this idea of service. And I didn't know if I was going to be, a firefighter, a police officer, a lawyer. I even considered the nunnery at one point, but I wanted to have children and they tend to frown upon that. And so ultimately I landed on the military, and I felt that was the best way that I could achieve this idea of service and still achieve my personal goals. So why am I telling you all this? Because successful people are motivated by something greater than themselves. Now, I want to be clear here. There's a stark difference between those that have a job or join the military to support their family and those that are trying to just get rich, right? Having a cause or a motivation that's bigger than oneself, whether that's love of country, serving your faith, providing for your family, or having extra income to give back to the community, all of these things help tie someone to the community around them. It breeds empathy, selflessness, kindness, and in the case of the military, it gives us something to fight for: our brothers in arms, our community, and our country. The same can be said for businesses at large. If the technology you're working on will someday go to help people with disabilities live a more fulfilling life, that is motivation someone can feed off of. It gives you personal satisfaction and a connection to the community. It gives you a reason to keep coming to work and to keep pushing forward. At Salesforce, our company was founded on the 1-1-1 model, where we give 1% of our company's equity, 1% of our company's product, and 1% of our employees' time to nonprofits or causes in our community. It's these type of initiatives that keep people tied in with the community, and it gives them something to work for and helps breed those character building traits of altruism, humanitarianism, and benevolence. And ultimately, I have found that not only successful, but happy people are those who have found work that fulfills them both spiritually and emotionally. So finding that motivation, finding that driver to keep teams pushing, especially in the face of obstacles or setbacks, is really key. And this is especially important in cross-functional teams that lack a formal chain of command. How do you inspire someone who doesn't report to you to prioritize your project, for example? I would argue that finding a common motivation or explaining the impact can be a driver or that uniting force. So the mission of the Blue Angels is to showcase the teamwork and professionalism of the United States Navy and Marine Corps through flight demonstration and community outreach, while inspiring a culture of excellence and service to country. So I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but what it isn't is a superficial motivation like fly a good show or get 35,000 Instagram followers. Instead, the motivation comes from representing every man and woman serving our country in harm's way and inspiring others to strive for excellence. So when you are on day 90 of not seeing your family and traveling the country at various air shows, the team could stay united around our foundational motivation. Because again, successful people and successful teams are motivated by something greater than themselves. Okay, moving on to the second M, minutia. So another thing that I believe has made me successful is my attention to detail, or in this case, to keep with the M alliteration, minutia. I'm sure you've heard of this cool phenomenon in the ocean called a rogue wave. Rogue waves are unusually large, unexpected, and suddenly appearing surface waves that can be extremely dangerous, even to large ships such as ocean liners. Rogue waves are rare, unpredictable, and may appear suddenly or without warning and can impact with tremendous force. While research into these waves is always ongoing, many scientists agree that a rogue wave is a result of several smaller surface waves meeting together in phase to create this giant force. So why am I giving you an oceanography lesson? Because even in your professional life, small ripples build into big waves. I'll give you some examples. In the Blue Angels and in the armed services in general, the little stuff is what stands between mission accomplishment and possibly losing your life. Our jets fly 18 inches apart. I fly my C-130 with a 139-foot wingspan at 40 feet above the ground. So there's not really any room for error. But on top of that, this attention to detail is what sets outstanding Marines apart from mediocre Marines. To me, if someone comes in with shined boots, their haircut, a nice uniform, their paperwork is formatted correctly all the time, their emails are professional with no spelling errors, they are on time and focused. To me, that person is tied together. They are so good at their job that they can handle and excel at all this other stuff that some may think is silly, but others may see it as polished or professional. Now, I'm not saying that every successful person needs to go out and get a high and tight like the Marine Corps, or crazy haircut, for those of you that don't know what that is. But what I am saying is those that get their work in on time, show up to meetings, format things correctly, they're projecting responsibility, reliability, focus, and dedication. As a leader, when I see a Marine like this, I want to promote them, continue to give them more responsibility, because they are showing that they have this current thing on lock and they're ready for a challenge. So I'll tell you a quick story about my career progression. So I went to the Naval Academy, then I went to grad school at Georgetown right after that. Then I went to flight school. And so I had almost a 6.5 year progression, I guess, to get from college to actually serving my country, right? I went through all of this training. And so when I showed up at my first squadron after I got my wings, I was like chomping at the bit to deploy, right? I had joined the military. I joined the Marine Corps because I wanted to support those men and women on the ground. And, the path to get there for me had been very, very long. And so when I finally got there, I was ready to go. I wanted to deploy. I wanted to lead Marines. And the way that a squadron is set up is maintenance is kind of broken up into different shops. So we have a propeller shop, we have an airframe shop, we have an engine shop, we have a flight equipment shop. And so all of these different shops have Marines in them that focus on the equipment on the airplane, that the name of the shop describes. And so usually it's about 50 Marines down there, and they have one officer that leads them. And I wanted to go to maintenance because I wanted to lead Marines. We have other jobs like in operations or administration or in safety that are vital to the squadron continuing, but they're mostly run by officers, and you get very little leadership experience. And so I wanted to go and lead Marines. I wanted to go to maintenance. And when I showed up my first day in the squadron, I was ready to march into my commanding officer's office and say, like, sir, this is what I want to do. So as soon as I show up day one, I'm super super ready to go, Katie. I walk in, and before I even say anything, my CO says, we're going to make you the adjutant, because I think it would be nice to have a friendly female face when someone first walks into the squadron. And so for those of you that might not know military speak, adjutant is basically a military way of saying secretary. Now, don't get me wrong, secretaries and EAs are vital to a lot of people's business, and I'm not undercutting that, but that is not why I personally joined the Marine Corps. And so I knew, based on the verbiage that they had given, that they gave me this job because it is a stereotypical female role. And when I tell you that I was pissed is an understatement, right? Because I wanted to lead. I wanted to do the typical Marine Corps thing, and they were putting me at a desk and I was making coffee and typing letters. And so that was not what I wanted to do. And don't get me wrong, I threw myself a pity party for like 5 minutes and was like, you know what? This is temporary. And if I'm going to have to be the adjutant, I'm going to be the best damn adjutant that they've ever seen. Right. So I don't drink coffee, but I learned to make a pretty awesome cup of coffee. I made sure that all of the tasks were done. I revolutionized the suicide prevention program. I registered a whole bunch of people to vote. And so I took on a lot of responsibilities to just try to prove my worth, even in a job that, not that I felt was beneath me, but a job that I felt didn't challenge me to the standard that I wanted to be challenged. So fast forward 6 months. I'm done with this job and I'm up for my next assignment. And so I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to march in there and I'm going to tell them I'm going to maintenance. I put in my time in this stereotypical female role. I'm going to get to go to maintenance and lead Marines finally, after making hundreds of cups of coffee, right? And so we have these things in the Marine Corps called, or we used to, they've since divested of them, but we had these things called family readiness officers. And they were civilians that were acted as a liaison between the families that were at home and the Marines that were deployed. So let's say somebody's credit card stops working and they can't get a hold of their deployed Marines for whatever reason, they'll go to the family readiness officer to help get in contact with their Marine or something like that. Another major role of the family readiness officer is they were a party planner. So they planned homecomings, they planned Easter egg hunts, Christmas parties, ice cream socials, you name it, these people planned it. Well, our family readiness officer took it upon herself to start cutting checks from squadron funds to herself, which, as you can imagine, is highly illegal. And so she got fired like 2 days before I was supposed to rotate jobs in my squadron. So I think you see where this is going. So as I go into march in and say, I'm going to maintenance, my CO informs me that this woman had been fired. And because most of the spouses of our Marines are women, that they need a woman to fill that job. And since it takes months to hire civilians into the military system, there's a lot of red tape there, that they need a Marine to fill the job temporarily. And so guess who they assigned the party planner role? That's right, it was me. And so as you can imagine, if I was pissed the first time, I was really pissed the second time. And so I would say I threw myself a pity party for an additional 15 minutes this time. And, I remember my mom when I was really young telling me bloom where you're planted. And I wanted to internalize that, but I was real mad for a little bit. So I let myself be mad. But then, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to be the best dang party planner that they've ever seen. And you better be sure, that bounce house was there 2 hours before the party. Those kids had every freaking flavor of ice cream that they could imagine at the ice cream social. I got a Santa that was actually rotund, not a pillow stuffed in there, right? I knocked it out of the park. And so fast forward another 6 months, I was not slated to deploy at all, which was really, really disappointing to me because, again, I had done 4 years at the academy. Then I went to grad school. Then I went to flight school. I showed up to my squadron and they're like, sorry, you're not going to Afghanistan. And for someone who had trained that long just to do that, it was like a shot in the heart, right? And so the C-130 squadrons don't deploy as a whole squadron. We deploy as detachments. So we have 16 airplanes and we deploy as a set of 4 airplanes. And so a fourth of the squadron kind of goes out on each deployment. Well, it usually takes about 6 months of what we refer to as workups before you're ready to deploy. And what workups are for example, the C-130 does refueling. So we give gas to people. We drop people and stuff out the back of our airplane. We call it aerial delivery. We shoot missiles off of our airplane. And so we do all of these different kind of mission sets, and we practice those in workups before we go into a combat zone. So the first time that you're doing these missions is not when you're being shot at, right? So you get proficient at it in friendly home territory, if you will. And it usually takes about 6 months to do. And so 6 weeks prior to our Afghanistan detachment pushing out, one of the pilots popped with a heart murmur and could not go. And so now they're like, oh my God, we have 6 weeks. We're going to have to find someone and spin them up in a fraction of the time that is normally used. and they're talking to the CO, and they're like, who is organized enough, proficient enough, driven enough to get this training done in a fraction of the time? And without missing a beat, my CO said, Katie. And so even though I had been given, I would say, opportunities that frustrated me, that were not in line with my ideal path, because I didn't say, oh, this is beneath me and brush it off, because I continue to push and produce gold and be excellent at everything I did, when a real opportunity actually came up, they had seen that even with the most mundane tasks, I was going to knock it out of the park. So when something really important came around, I was the one that was picked. And so then I deployed, I got a ton of flight hours there. I came back, I upgraded to aircraft commander, immediately deployed again as an aircraft commander. And when I was deployed, because I had done 2 deployments back to back, I had gotten a lot of flight hours in my career. And the Blue Angels actually reached out to me and asked me to apply. And so I applied, and I ultimately got selected for the team, and I became the first female Blue Angel pilot. And so I can trace all of my kind of career high points, or the fact that I'm successful today and even speaking to you today, all the way back to those minute details that I was doing when I was making a cup of coffee. And so it's funny to kind of break it down in that manner. And so I would also like to say, outside of individual focus and individual points in my life that minutia has influenced, this responsibility also sits with a manager to recognize talent in others. And so I'll give you a quick rundown of Marine Lance Corporal Drew Lockyer. So Drew, we were on missions for up to like 13 hours when we were in Afghanistan. And so you would get to know your crew really, really well. And we would talk about anything from like Star Wars to politics to history to whatever. And, he was one of the most intelligent people that I had ever met, but he wasn't promoting. He was hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I started doing my digging, and all of his core issues really came from that he was bored. He was outstanding at his job. He had gotten all his professional qualifications that he could get, but no one was challenging him. No one was pushing him. And he was saying, like, if I came to work with my shine boots, no one noticed. No one pushed me. No one gave me opportunities. So I might as well not waste my time. And so despite not being in his direct chain of command, I started giving him extra tasks, telling him to do online courses, taking leadership opportunities, doing his professional military education. And before we returned from Afghanistan, he was promoted to corporal. And then about a year and a half later, he was promoted to sergeant. He actually ended up getting out of the military. He went to UNC Wilmington, where he got all A's, and he just recently graduated from law school at Drexel. So this idea of minutia and applying it in your own life, it's just as important as recognizing it in others as it is to your own to achieving success. So again, just to recap, remember, these small, seemingly insignificant details can build your reputation and open doors, because as we learned in our oceanography lesson earlier, small ripples make big waves. Okay, so on to the final M, and then we'll open it up for questions. So some of you may have heard the quote by George Santayana that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So let's dig into that a little bit from a personal point of view. One thing that I feel speaks the loudest about someone's character is how they handle failure. Even in the Blue Angels, no one is perfect, but that doesn't mean we don't continue to strive for it every day. After every flight, we have a 2-hour debrief to discuss what we did wrong. And that's the key there, what we did wrong. Self-reporting failures or mistakes requires detailed introspection. Everyone wants to believe they're awesome. However, you'll not actually be awesome until you begin to acknowledge that there are things that maybe you could do better. I always tell people the same phrase when they ask if I have any recommendations to young people who want to become Blue Angels. And that is, calm seas don't make a skilled sailor. And what I mean by that is, it's not the easy times in your life that impact you as a person. It's the tough times. It's the rough seas that shape you as a person. And if you can walk away from every situation, whether that's positive or negative, and learn something, then you're just one step closer to becoming the person and the leader that you want to be. And it doesn't just stop with your mistakes. My mother, when I was growing up, especially as a teenager, would lecture me on like, I made this mistake when your age, so don't do the same as me. And obviously, because I was a teenage girl, I made the mistakes anyways, because my mom knew nothing back then. But as I get older, I see the point. If your peers make mistakes, or even if they have successes, take learning points away from their experiences. The same can go for managers and bosses. All of us have had those terrible bosses, right? Or maybe they were lazy, or maybe they, did all their leadership via email instead of picking up the phone or walking down the hallway for a face-to-face. Or on the flip side, maybe you had a leader you really respected. Take those positive and negative things and use them to shape your own leadership style. So all of us have probably noticed in the last 10 years or so, pretty much every movie from like my childhood or even maybe your younger days is being remade. Like A Star is Born, Little Women, The Lion King, Aladdin. I even heard they're going to remake Scarface. These remakes usually go like one of two ways. They either blow the original out of the water like A Star is Born, or they're miserable to watch and leaves you nostalgic for the original. It's like they forget about the things that made the original great and are including all of the missteps of the original with little improvement. With this in mind, a more memorable and perhaps less ominous way to remember the sentiments of George Santayana's quote is, "Those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it." I prefer the phrase, "Learning from your mistakes prevents bad remakes." So I was watching a video online. Many of you probably know this person, Sarah Blakely. She's the founder of Spanx. I have had 3 children, so I should probably buy stock in Spanx to keep all of this in. But she was discussing her childhood, and every night at dinner, her father would ask her what she failed at that day. And she would say, well, I didn't make the soccer team, or I got picked last for dodgeball. And the parents, particularly her father, would celebrate the fact that she failed, because at least she put herself out there and tried. So tied with this idea of learning from mistakes is the idea of not being paralyzed by the fear of failing or making a mistake that you don't try. So next time they ask for volunteers to lead a project and you're scared, do it. Take those opportunities, because you'll never succeed until you try. And if you fail, well, you learn something for the next time. In the Blue Angels, for example, I mentioned earlier, I was very, very junior when I was being selected. I didn't even want to apply because I was like a whole 2 or 3 years junior to everyone else who had ever been on the team. But obviously, I put in my package and it all worked out in the end. And that was from the urging of my teammates who really believed in me and really thought that I could do it. So for those of you who are looking to be people managers someday, which I believe is pretty much everybody, given the mission of GirlCon, it's really up to you to breed the work environment or trust with your teams where you can openly discuss failures and successes. People should not be hiding their failures or scared to talk about their shortcomings. I'll give you a quick story because I know we want to get to Q&A, but mental health in the military is a really big issue. We have PTSD struggles, suicide problems, and we actually have biannual training to discuss these things and talk about the resources that Marines have if they are experiencing any of these symptoms. Now, I had 2 babies when I was on active duty. I had my 3rd when I was in the reserve. But after the birth of my 2nd son, I had very severe postpartum depression. I sought help. I was put on meds. I got a really great therapist. And I got through the really bad times, was able to wean off my medication, and my relationship with my son is better than it has ever been. But I hid the fact that I was struggling from everyone at work. The idea of sharing this vulnerability with my company when I was a company commander was really scary because, I had a company of 150 men. There were no women. I was the senior person and there were no women. And so I was already the quote unquote weaker sex. So what would my Marines think of me I was terrified. But, biannual suicide prevention training came around and I decided that, I was going to share my own mental health struggles. Not 2 days later, did I have 4 people in my office thanking me for sharing my story and saying they were going to seek help themselves because they knew I wasn't going to judge them and that they trusted me not to use their perceived weakness against them. And so I will conclude by saying that, these 3 themes, motivation, minutia, and mistakes, are not solely reserved for your professional successes. I use them every day in my personal life as well. So maybe your motivation to be a great mom is because you want to give your children the support maybe you didn't have. Maybe you become really good at remembering birthdays and anniversaries and remembering the small stuff because it brings joy to your family and friends. And maybe you made mistakes with some friendships or didn't acknowledge someone's importance before they passed away. And you use that experience and those mistakes to help shape you as a better friend, a better spouse, a better child, or a better parent. So that concludes my prepared statement. So if we have time, I'm happy to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Katie, for your inspiring words. So now we're going to begin a quick Q&A. So for those of you watching, put in your questions in the chat and we'll take a look. But our first question for you, Katie, is how do you manage work-life balance?
Yeah, so work-life balance is something that is definitely a struggle. There's been an alliteration. It's not mine, so I don't take credit for it, but the alliteration of glass balls and plastic balls. I don't know if you've heard this before. So you're juggling all of these balls and you need to be able to prioritize what you can drop without kind of emotionally damaging those people in your life, right? So my children will remember it if I do not show up at their recital that they've been, practicing for 6 months. Will my boss not remember that I didn't go to a meeting that's not that important? Probably not. So I could drop that plastic ball and keep the glass ball in the air, right? And so I really try to prioritize that. Are my kids going to die if I feed them chicken nuggets three days in a row? Probably not, right? So that is a glass ball that I could drop. I try not to do that, but sometimes it comes down to it. But yeah, so I would say it really comes to when you have a conflict, what is going to long term, when you're on your deathbed, which one are you going to wish that you did? Do you wish that you were at work or do you wish that you spent time with your child? Right. And so I think, and then sometimes it comes down to it, like this isn't a huge, important work meeting that defines the rest of your career. Sorry, kids, we're going to have McDonald's drive through because mommy's got to go to this meeting. Right. And so there are ways to do it, but I would say you just have to prioritize the balls sometimes.
For sure. Our next question is, do you have any relevant skills that you think are important to have as a high school student? A lot of GirlCon members and people watching are in high school. So do you have any skills that you think that they should develop right now, hard or soft skills?
Yeah. So, I mean, hard skills can be taught and can be learned in school or on the job. So I think soft skills are really where people can make their money. And I think communication is really key, and especially for young women, confident communication, right? There's so many times that I got walked all over early in my career, even as a Marine, right? I'm supposed to be the most badass person in the room. But even as a Marine, I would get walked on because it was just kind of ingrained in me that women are quiet or women don't speak up or we let men talk first. And so I would say that confident communication, be ready to stand up for your position in a manner that doesn't cause conflict, so to speak, but a manner that is logical and demanding of respect when you present yourself. So I would say like that type of bearing and that type of communication skills will serve you multitudes over in your career.
Yeah, for sure. Our next question for you is, who has been your biggest role model growing up?
So growing up, I wrote to Sally Ride when I was like in 3rd grade. And she, if you don't know, she's the first American woman in space. She's also an LGBTQ plus community member, and she's since passed away, but she signed her autograph. And like, I was one of those weird kids that didn't have like, NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys on my wall. I had posters of airplanes and Sally Ride on my wall. And so I would say she was a huge influence on me. I'm sorry if you can hear my daughter crying outside, work-life balance, right? And then my father was a 26-year veteran in the Navy. And so as I joined the military, he was also a pilot. It was really easy to be able to call home and talk to him about leadership conundrums, or even in the cockpit, Dad, I can't get this thing down. Can you give me some advice? So he was a big influence on me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's all the time we have for questions today, but thank you so much, Katie. I really, really enjoyed listening to you speak, and thank you so much for everyone for joining. Yeah, thank you. And then we're going to pass it off to Kyla and Sneha for our closing. Thank you so much. Bye, Katie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Katie, for inspiring us and teaching us all about your bravery and humility. Looking back at this year of planning and execution, we as a board couldn't be more proud. As scary as it seemed setting off to plan our 5th annual event, this year has been defined by tremendous growth. We set off to organize our very first hybrid event, multiply our impacts exponentially, and watch as our team defied all expectations and excelled through every single challenge that came their way.
To start, we have seen tremendous growth individually, with each team member becoming comfortable and confident in their own voices, ready to take the mic in a meeting and share their perspectives. We've also seen growth among our phenomenal attendees as you all get involved with us year after year. We're happy to share we have crossed the 3,000 mark this year of young women impacted by GirlCon over the past 5 years. We are so excited to see and support the constant growth of GirlCon and grateful for all the young people that are a part of it.
Exactly. Another exciting area in which we've seen growth is simply in the depth and breadth of topics and discussions that we have had at GirlCon each year. This year, from media to recycling to travel to intellectual property, it's abundantly clear and ever exciting that the impacts that technology is having across every single industry is expanding rapidly and affecting us all. And we hope that all of you have heard and seen yourself in the speakers this past week, and now see yourself as the leaders in technology that our future needs. The future needs each and every one of you. We hope that this past week you have found the inspiration, friendships, and the encouragement that you need to move forward, knowing that regardless of where your passion takes you, whether that be in a courtroom, a designer studio, or Capitol Hill, you have this sisterhood and mentors to support you along the way. Many of you have done this already, but connect with everyone you have met this week on LinkedIn or over email. We are here to support you every step of the way. Lean on the people you have met this week. Launch forward to the next adventure together, and live stream or carpool to GirlCon together next year.
As we reflect on the past 5 years of GirlCon, there are certain people and places that have made an immeasurable impact. A very special thank you to Ramona, Alex, and the ISACA Chicago team, the Expedia team, including Ashley, Monica, Bailey, Anastasia, and Brenda, and Sarah Putz and the entire Google team. And, of course, the magic that has continued to live on would not be possible without the phenomenal dedication and motivation of our core team. Prachi, Vidya, Chris, Ali, Morgan, Michelle, Sumaya, and Zara. Proud doesn't begin to describe how we feel when we see each and every one of you work to turn the GirlCon vision into reality. We are inspired, humbled, and grateful beyond words can describe. To our graduating seniors, Prachi, Vidya, Ali, and Zara, we cannot wait to see where this next chapter will take you and the lives you will touch.
The empowerment, networking, and inspiration that has taken place this week would not be possible without every single one of the brilliant attendees here today as well. We hope that you continue to stay connected and involved with GirlCon and help support our mission, whether that be through a donation to our cause, sharing a connection to a cool speaker or idea that you might have for next year, or continuing to attend year after year. We hope you have had a wonderful time at GirlCon 2022. And with that, I'll pass it off to our incredible core team for a few more closing remarks. Thanks again, and see you next year, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyla and Sneha, and to the entire board. First of all, wow, what a spectacular week this has been. I know I speak for the entire team when I say we are truly grateful for the presence and enthusiasm of each and every one of you during this conference. And I'm also honored to be able to work with such an amazing team over the past 4 years. It's honestly been such an inspiring and life-changing experience. Especially the past few months, it's been pretty difficult to say the least, with late-night FaceTime calls, hundreds of emails, and schoolwork on top of it all. Pulling together this conference was definitely not an easy task. So shout out to the entire GirlCon 2022 team. But seeing your engagement, each comment in the questions and chats, the Instagram stories, reposting it, seeing every single one of your smiles in the background truly made this a worthwhile experience, and it's what fuels us to run GirlCon every single year.
Yes, for sure. These past 4 years on the GirlCon team have been absolutely amazing. I'm continuously honored and humbled to be on a team of remarkable young women who constantly inspire me. One of the most beautiful parts of GirlCon is that the conference is entirely run by teenagers. Although this sometimes poses a challenge, the GirlCon planning team works tirelessly to make this week possible and incredible. I would like to thank both the board and the core team for all of your hard work and dedication to this conference. You all continually inspire me to be a better person and team member. Attendees, I hope that all of you were able to learn and grow this week. Whether that was meeting someone at a networking session or attending a breakout session, I hope that each and every one of you learned something that you will carry on with you for the rest of your life post-conference. I cannot wait for the future of GirlCon, and I'm so grateful for everything I've learned while being on this team.
Thanks, Prachi. I would also like to extend a final thank you to our sponsors who have been an incredible force in making this conference possible. We hope that you have all enjoyed your week at GirlCon and wanted to conclude this conference by recognizing all the people who have made this possible. And now, a huge thank you to our gold and partner sponsors, ISACA Chicago Chapter, IBM, CME Group, Expedia, and IMC. To all of our participants, our 500 swag bags are all thanks to our amazing sponsors. Finally, thank you to the Google team for assisting us in navigating the live platform. And thank you so much to our fiscal sponsor, Bits and Bytes Cybersecurity Education. This conference truly would not be possible without you.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Now for our speakers, from Gayatri Dadar on the very first day of this conference, to Joy Afudu, and finally Katie Cook today. These powerful women are impacting the next generation of female leaders. All of our keynote speakers have inspired us beyond words can describe. Your advice, help, and inspiration this past week has empowered thousands of girls from all around the world. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tell your story and leaving our 2022 attendees and team in awe, and this conference as our best one yet. Additionally, I wanted to thank anybody who led a breakout or professional development session. Your guidance and insight has empowered our attendees to fearlessly pursue their passions.
Thanks, Morgan. Before we leave, I want to say a tremendous thank you to our team at Google. This conference truly would not be possible without all of you. And a special shout out to Sarah and Lauren. We thank you so much for all the work that you've put in to make these live streams possible. We've learned so much from you and are so incredibly honored to have had you throughout this past week and in years past, and are grateful for this lasting partnership.
Finally, a shout out to our design team, PR team, logistics, and sponsorship team for working so relentlessly throughout the past months. All of you are amazing people, and I'm so grateful to have worked with such great minds and for all of your hard work you put into every task, along with our ambassadors who have been there every step of the way to support this initiative and incredible team.
And beyond these 3 days, there are so many ways to be involved with GirlCon throughout the year. The easiest and best way is to stay connected through our Instagram account. If you haven't followed us already, go to GirlCon Tech on all platforms. We have so many opportunities such as Instagram Lives, takeovers, and posts. We also send out monthly emails with our newsletters and updates about cool opportunities with many of our sponsors and speakers.
Lastly, we would love to have many of you as GirlCon team members. Applications for our core, national, and ambassador teams go live in late November. Make sure you check out our Instagram page and your emails often so you have more information on how to apply. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and we look forward to seeing you all again next year.
Thank you. We hope you grow and glow. Bye.
Bye, everyone.